Welcome to the Front Office Cast. Glad to have everybody with us. We had an exciting week of football. Got another exciting week coming up. We're your hosts. I'm Mark.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Peter.
And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the previous week. We got some upsets that we want to talk about. We got some interesting games that we want to look at for next week. Also, a couple things we want to talk about. First thing,
we want to tell you how right we were about week one.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
I think that's necessary.
Yeah.
So let you know
we did a great job.
Good we are at what we do.
Yeah.
And when we're going to talk about, we have our first official hashtag of the week, the Fappening, which my friend Peter here is going to fill you in on. Peter, what is the Fappening? What is this?
Seeing as this show exists on the internet and the Fappening also exists on the internet, I would say Google it.
Google it.
And you will maybe be disgusted, but probably not
maybe
disappointed.
Be overjoyed.
I feel like that might be a demographic thing, a male-female thing, but we'll see. We'll find out. Let us know. And then also, we're super excited about this. Our first Vine video of the week. This week, week one had an absolute gem, maybe the best we'll have all season. It is Antonio Brown drop-kicking Cleveland punter in the face, and it is amazing.
It is.
We're going to show that to you, and we are always going to be posting these things on Twitter, so you should caption it, hit us back, and follow us at thefrontofficecast. Kicking him in the face, it is absolutely amazing. We're going to post it on our Twitter handle, at thefrontofficecast. Also, we have some very exciting news. Peter found this out earlier for us today, and we're all very pumped.
It is my job to check our Gmail account. And this week we received our first piece of fan mail. And it was from Switzerland.
Wow.
So I think that we can now officially claim the title of the #1 American football podcast in Switzerland.
I like that. I'll take it.
I'll toast to that.
Hear, hear.
Of course, this week's sponsor is Shock Top. Oh, I won't leave you anybody. That's all good.
Belgian beer, not Swiss, but close enough.
It's all the same to me. I really
beer
don't know
tastes
the difference. Good. And Mark, what are we going to be talking about on the show today?
So yeah, we got the previews from last week. We have some interesting games to talk about, some upsets, kind of a stinker of a game between Washington and Houston. We weren't sure what to expect between two of the worst teams last season, and it was an interesting game, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to have the games to look forward to this coming week. So that's what we got for you. Also, fantasy picks. We had some interesting players show up this week, so we're going to talk about buy and sell. So that's what we got going on. So coming at you live from LA. Well, not live, I guess, but this is the Front Office Cast.
This week we're trying out a new segment that we like to call Getting Offensive. This does not have to do with throwing the pigskin, but instead with the stinkers of the week. Every week there's a couple games which are just painful to watch.
Yeah.
And Jordan, what was this week's?
This week's, we talked about at the top of the show, it has to be Washington at the Houston Texans. You would expect lots of offense from this new revamped Washington Redskins team. RG3 running around, and you just didn't get any of that. They put up 6 points, final score 17-6. The only offensive touchdown came on a Ryan Fitzpatrick deep ball to DeAndre Hopkins on a blown coverage. It wasn't even a good play. He just straight up was let loose, and it turned into an 80-yard touchdown. So that is definitely the worst thing I've seen this week.
Yeah, and what do you think, Mark? Do you think this is what we're going to see all year from sort of these two teams, or do you think it gets better?
You know, I hope not. I mean, the thing is the Texans defense, I like to see them keep this going. Jadeveon Clowney, he's a fantastic player. He's going to be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So, but even in the game he was in, he made some good plays. But I mean, J.J. Watt was still the explosive defensive player, and he really just threw it to the Redskins. So, I expect to see the Houston's D still keep that up, keep that going. Hopefully, with that kind of momentum, they still got healthy players. So. Ryan Fitzpatrick, man, he's got to work that out. He's got a lot of talent to throw to, so he just needs to make it happen. I think he could do a lot more with that. He needs to. RG3 in Washington, when your kicker's the only guy putting up.
Fucking disgrace.
Oh man,
I'm gonna say it. He was, every time he got the ball, at least after the first 2 drives, he was straight up running 7 yards back and then trying to throw the ball downfield. You can't do that. You got to stand in the pocket. You got to be able to trust those guys around you. And I don't know if the offensive line was that bad. I'd have to go back and watch the tape.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help when you have edge rushers trying to come around and set the edge on you, and you step into them. The point is you step up to let your offensive tackles push them out past you, but you're walking right into them, and it was every fucking time, and it was terrible.
I honestly think it was a combination of both. I mean, their offensive line has always been a little bit shaky, but it's also kind of hard to say as all offensive line when you got a beast of J.J. Watt plowing through. Nobody can stop him.
That's why it's hard to tell.
But still, RG3, he does. He's taken a lot of hits. We know he takes hits. He's okay to take hits. He needs to step in the pocket and make plays. So it's a combination of both.
And I think that raises the question of, here we're seeing RG3, the Rams got a huge load when that pick was traded. J.J. Watt just got his big contract extension. These are the two marquee names in this game, and they seem to be going in opposite directions. I mean,
That's
Watt seems to have validated his contract. So at RG3, I mean, does it get better? Or was what we saw that first year flat?
I think it does.
And there's a few things to point to that. I think there's too much talent around him for that. He was running on kind of an 80% offense. They didn't have Jordan Reed for most of the game.
Right.
And then furthermore, you look at Jay Gruden and what he was able to do with Andy Dalton in Cincinnati. I think RG3 is a much better quarterback than Andy Dalton is. And I think after a while, this is the thing. We were just talking about this. Week 1, everyone overreacts. Everyone starts saying, you got to fire the coach, you got to do this. I'm a Rams fan. We got blown out 35-6 by the Minnesota Vikings. It looked really, really bad. But it's week 1. You got to figure out what works. You got to play to your strengths and game plan for that.
Well, and the other thing
that's what's going to start happening with these guys.
And the other thing that I'll give RG3 credit for, like, he didn't throw up interceptions. He still put up almost 300 yards in that bad of a loss. He still, when he made passes, he still performed fairly well. So I think he's going to still use that. I think he's going to get better. Is he still going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league? He's going to have to prove that still. But
let me add to that and also say a lot of things that went wrong, like everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for the Redskins. There was their backup tight end, Paul, was running for an 80-yard touchdown and got caught from behind, fumbled the ball inside the 15-yard line. And it's just like just shooting yourself in the foot over and over and over again. So I do think it gets better from here.
Well, I certainly hope so, or they're going to be the next stinker of the week again.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which,
what do we think sort of next week? What do you guys think? I mean, are these two teams going to be right back in it, or?
I think both of these teams are going to be a part of it. One of them is, I think. You look at the matchups for next week, and you have Washington hosting Jacksonville at home, which may not be that much of a stinker just because there might be a lot of offense on Washington's side. They could blow up for 30 points, and it would be really entertaining to watch. And then Houston's going into Oakland. I think that's going to be the stinker right there. I think Derek Carr going against that Houston defense, trying to make something happen, not going to be too pretty.
No.
No.
He might look like RG3 in that scenario, so yeah. But then again, also
actually, if you make Derek Carr look like RG3, you're doing something right,
You might be doing a little something right, but RG3 on the ground a lot is not what you want to see.
True,
so that's the thing. But also, I mean, Jacksonville, look what they did against Philadelphia, so who knows what could happen with that. So, I don't know, we'll see.
We'll see. Speaking of, not quite a stinker, but an upset that happened last week that caught all of us by surprise. I know I'm sorry Liz is my sister, I told her to pick Chicago to beat Buffalo in her Survivor pool and she's already lost, so that's my fault. But that was the upset of the week in my mind.
Yeah, certainly, and I mean, Survivor pool picks last week, I mean, with that Eagles game, that first half there, and the Chicago game, I think you would have wiped out probably 75% to 80% of everybody playing.
True.
I know my league got that. That's exactly what would have happened. But yeah, I mean, it was such a surprise. I mean, Chicago sort of finished last year. Yeah, they sort of threw away their playoff chances at the end of the season. But everyone sort of thought with that offense, with Alshon Jeffrey emerging, you still got Forte and all those weapons that they were going to really sort of come back and be something this year. But Buffalo sort of has overcome some injuries that sort of came their way in the offseason. And EJ Manuel, you sort of look at that team, and he's got a lot of weapons to throw to. On the outside, some very good receivers.
Right.
In the backfield with Jackson and Spiller, they've really got a chance to sort of put something together. And that whole team sort of falls on, what can EJ Manuel do with this? Because they gave him the keys to a very nice car.
Right.
Sort of maybe a Phaeton, if you will. Okay. Sort of an overlooked but still very nice model.
Okay.
But yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see sort of what they can do.
Yeah. Why do you think they were able to pull this one out, Mark? Why do you think Buffalo was able to do this?
Man, that's the thing. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you didn't expect Buffalo to do it, and you kind of downplayed what they do have on offense, but they do have talent there. And as long as E.J. Manuel can stay up and he can make those plays, I mean, we've always given props to Sammy Watkins. He didn't do a whole lot in the game, but he still has the talent there to be able to do it. So the other thing is obviously Chicago was a little underwhelming for the talent that they have. They're supposed to be a much better offense. I would have expected them to put up more points, to just run all over it offensively, and they just didn't do it. I mean, Jay Cutler's healthy. He's a good quarterback. I really like him. But it just didn't happen for him.
For me, it came down to two things and two stats. Buffalo Bills, 33 rushes for 193 yards. That's big ground game. You're just talking about everything they have in the backfield. They had Anthony Dixon, C.J. Spiller, Fred Jackson. They didn't even play Bryce Brown that much, but they have a lot of backs they consistently hand the ball off to and give everyone a different look. If they can stick with that, they might actually be kind of legitimate. I'll give them that. And the other thing, Marc, you brought up, is the underwhelming offense of Chicago, which turned the ball over 3 times. When you turn the ball over, you're not going to win games. That's all there is to it. But not only did they turn the ball over, they turned the ball over and gave Buffalo good position with that running game in their territory.
And when that kind of position and that many yards, touchdowns are going to happen. The game's going to get won.
Exactly. They were already in field goal range, I think, after 2 of the turnovers, one of which was a fumble that they took inside the 20. When you do that kind of stuff, you're going to lose ball games. And I think that's what tipped the scales here.
I think it fell more on the Bears for sure. So
yeah, certainly, and I feel like I can't emphasize enough. I was very impressed with Buffalo being able to come out. I mean, especially in the offseason, losing Jarvis Bird, Kiko Calero not playing. They're really sort of in a position where they're overachieving at this point, and if they can keep that up, it'll be cool to watch.
They don't have a bad D-line, so we'll see if they can do it. So now we get to pat ourselves on the back. One of my favorite parts of the show. Last week we predicted the games of Green Bay at Seattle and Indy at Denver, and I have to say we basically got both of them exactly right. I know I went with Green Bay in that game, but that was mostly because you guys already chose.
Kind of like I had
a vote. I gotta show play devil's advocate a little bit. But Seattle goes in and stomps Green Bay, embarrassing. And Denver, they looked like they were going to run away with this one, and then Indy pulled something together. Andrew Luck, I've never seen him so frustrated, and then he just comes back. That's what I love about that kid.
That motivated him. Like, he got frustrated, he came back in, he put his head in the game, he went to the grind, and he almost made it happen, and that's what he does. The guy's had a lot of games when coming back from behind in the second half. Like, he can do it, and he came out there and showed it. It was in Denver, and Denver played a hell of a game. Their defense stepped up. We talked about them stepping up, and they did it.
Defense was great.
That helped Denver obviously win it. So.
Let's talk about the Indy defense for a second. I think they're in big trouble moving forward. They just lost Robert Mathis. They already lost him for 4 games due to suspension, but now he's out for the year, and they were already weak at pass rush to begin with. 19 and a half sacks a year ago. How do you replace that? Then seemingly they couldn't get pressure on Peyton Manning, and you got to go and play the kind of teams they have to play. I don't know. And Tennessee played really well. Are they going to be able to pull this out? I don't know.
Yeah, no. I think losing Mathis is big. They're really not going to be able to replace that production, and it just puts more pressure on the shoulders of Andrew Luck to come out and produce, and put his team in a position where they're able to rush the passer with a lead in a way that doesn't require sort of that individual skill where they can just sort of say, okay, go.
Right.
And if he can give them leads, I mean, it's what they did with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning used to stake him to a lead. I mean, obviously they had Freeney and them back then, which sort of was a little better.
Right.
But you can sort of piece it together on the D-line, and that's what they're going to have to do.
Yeah. So I don't have high hopes for it, but we'll see what happens. So we're going to take a little break. When we come back in the front office, we're going to talk some fantasy football. There were some great performances from Week 1, some not so good performances from people you would expect the great performances from, and we're going to tell you what was for real, what was not.
Welcome back to the front office. We're going to jump right into our next segment. We're going to talk fantasy football. We love talking fantasy football. You guys love playing it and talking about it. So we're going to go over what we saw, this last week. Things that you can count on again, things that might have been a fluke. So we're going to jump into that. Let's talk about the captain position of the teams. Let's talk about quarterbacks. What did we see in the first week that you guys liked and didn't like?
First thing that pops off the list to me is an underrated guy. Those guys that you probably didn't get drafted, but might still be available in your league. So let's talk a little bit about Jake Locker, quarterback from Tennessee. Put up 19 or 20 fantasy points, depending on exactly what kind of scoring you're in. But do we think this is sustainable? Because I'm buying it. I think he can. I think he was a top first-round pick. He has the mobility to keep the plays alive, and he's got some pretty good weapons he's surrounded himself with, and not a bad O-line.
Yeah.
No, I think he's got a good chance to do it. I always look at the coaching, and Ken Wisenhunt coming in. I think he can definitely put together something that'll work. My worry with Locker is he's had durability issues the last couple of years, and if they don't keep him off his back, he's not going to be throwing. And then, I don't know who it is now. I don't think it's Kerry Collins anymore. I don't think it's Matt Hasselbeck anymore.
I believe it's actually Zach Mettenberger from the LSU is now the backup.
Fully recovered from his injuries and himself. But yes, that's my concern.
So yeah, he better stay healthy.
And that's my concern with Locker. And I don't know if I would trust him as a QB2. Sure, stash him on your bench if you need him. But
I think especially too, if he can keep the momentum that now he's got after beating Kansas City, who was one of the top teams last year. I mean, they were a playoff team last year, and they destroyed them. So that's got to boost their confidence, and hopefully he keeps that going. So.
And the other thing that you remind me of is this was a run-first attack against Kansas City. So they're not expecting to go out there and put up 400 yards like a Drew Brees or run some kind of system like that. He's supposed to hand the ball off, give first downs, extend plays, run some play action, things like that. So I think he's going to have a lot of success.
Right.
Let's also talk about somebody, a guy who's been a perennial all-star, all-pro, who had a very down season last year, Matt Ryan from the Atlanta Falcons. He put up 30 points last week, over 400 yards, broke some of his own personal records. Against the Saints defense that's supposed to have one of the best secondaries in the league right now. Is he for real?
I think so. I mean, we've seen Matt Ryan do this before. Last season it was terrible for them. But, I mean, when you come out against the Saints D and you go back to your old form, you're making plays, I mean, he's got what it takes. I think he does it. Do I think he's going to put up 30 points every game? No. But I think he's going to be better than Jake Locker. So, I mean, I buy into Matt Ryan. I always will. Last season, halfway through you probably dropped him unless you had nobody else to go to. But I think this season you stick with him if you got him. So I like him.
I think health is going to be key for them too. Peter, let's talk about a guy, Monday Night Football guy, had a big coming out party, looked really good. Matthew Stafford for the Detroit Lions. Do you think he can keep it up?
I do think Stafford can keep it up. You saw him doing some things in this game that he hasn't been able to do in the past. One is sort of moving around and extending plays. He's sort of been drop back and throw. He made a couple throws, especially one big long throw to Calvin Johnson where he was able to sort of step out of the pocket and get it downfield. You sort of add in that wrinkle, and I think it's going to be difficult for opposing teams. You've also got Golden Tate on the other side of Calvin Johnson now. Made a lot of big plays. The guy's got just glue sticks for hands. I don't think he dropped a pass in that. I don't think he missed a target in that game. I think Detroit's primed for the offense. We've been waiting for this to happen, right? It's been a couple of years now where it's like, okay, they've got Reggie Bush,
right.
Okay, they've got Calvin Johnson. All right, like when is it going to happen?
Right.
And I do think this is the year.
Yeah. And let's not forget, Joe Lombardi came over as from the offensive coordinator position in New Orleans, who had an okay offense, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that.
I think what Stafford has to do too is stay away from turnovers. He did a lot of that last year. If he can stay away from that, he's going to be good. You can always count on the guy throwing to Calvin Johnson, the diving play he made in the end zone, awesome. So you can always count on that. Just stay away from the turnovers, and he'll be good.
And one thing I have to throw a red flag up too is Matthew Stafford was not. You talking about durability? He was not a picture of durability at the beginning of his career. You don't like to see. He was making a lot of plays with his feet, but he's being very aggressive, and he's turned into this aggressive mentality, which I love as a leader. He's got this fire. He likes to make those plays, fire up his team. But my issue with it is that you're putting yourself in jeopardy, and if you lose Matt Stafford, that team falls to the floor.
Yeah.
So that's the way I see that one going down. So let's running backs now. Jamal Charles, first round pick, top 3 pick in every single league, maybe the top overall pick in most of them. Put up total 3 points. Yeah. What happened? Well, buying or selling him being this bad the rest of the year?
He's not going to be this bad,
of course.
But he's not going to be able to do what he did last year. I think a lot of things came together last year for the Chiefs that really sort of put them in a place to do better. I think they overachieved last year. And I think that
totally
Charles
agree.
himself was also able to overachieve last year.
Yeah.
So, this year with sort of the whole team sort of taking a step back, I think he will too. That said, he's still a workhorse running back.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's going to get the carries. He can catch it out of the backfield.
That's the other thing that I was going to talk about. Like, he's a receiver. Like, he's going to make plays both sides of that offense. So I think, yeah, he might not do as well. Plus, after what everybody saw him do last year, people are going to pay more attention to him. They're going to be watching him more. So I think he's still going to be a productive running back receiver. Is he going to be that awesome? I agree with you guys. He's not going to be that great, but he's not going to be doing 3 points a week.
No, that's not going to happen. I wouldn't go jumping off any bridges.
Yeah.
Justin Forsett, 14 points for the Baltimore Ravens. Ray Rice, I legally have to say that, otherwise we aren't considered a football NFL show, but we're not going to talk about him. We're going to talk about Justin Forsett. Do we think, looking like he's going to be the starter in Baltimore now, do we buy him being able to keep that up?
Well, keeping that up, I don't know. Like, I mean, he looked good in the game. He put up some points. I mean, especially with Ray Rice going out, he's going to get a lot of plays. So we're going to definitely see what happens. Especially in deeper leagues, I'm sure somebody's got him. So is he going to be your first go-to running back? I don't think so. But throughout the season, you might start sliding him up higher into your roster because I think he can do it. So he's just got to prove himself, and this is the best opportunity without Ray Rice there. So he's got a lot going on him, and I think he can produce. So we'll see.
I've always said fantasy football is about where opportunity and talent meet, and I think this is a great example of that. He's going to have a chance to start. Something a lot of people, Justin Forsett is not a household name, but one of the reasons for that is he was always behind Marshawn Lynch in Seattle. He's never been a starting runner before. People have always, I remember seeing people talking about him as a sleeper for years past in fantasy football because he's a talented guy. I think he averaged 4.9 yards a carry. Up until this point.
Alfred Morris numbers.
Yeah.
He was a fantastic running back.
So I'm very interested to see how this plays out. Hopefully they give him the chance and they don't go to Bernard Pierce or the rookie they took, who I can't pronounce his name. But hopefully he gets a chance. I'm really excited to see what he can do. Talk about the Jets running offense as a whole. That's a CJ 2K, Chris Johnson, and Chris Ivory. They put up 25 points last week. Is this something that's going to continue to happen?
Rex Ryan likes to run the football. We've seen it, throughout his entire tenure there. Going back to the days of Thomas Jones.
Right.
They're going to get carries. Whether they keep putting up numbers like this is the big question. And at least for me, when it comes to fantasy, what I'm looking for is consistency. And I'm not quite at a point yet where I'm going to trust Chris Ivory or Chris Johnson to be my number one or my number two. I definitely would like them sort of in a flex play, depending on what my roster looks like. But I can't quite trust them yet at this point. I don't see it.
And I would go with that too.
Absolutely.
Let's not forget they were playing Oakland this week. It was week one. That could be a total flash in the pan, and we'll know in a couple of weeks. We'll know for sure. Moving to wide receiver. This is going to be a fun couple of topics here. My first two are Brandon Cooks for the New Orleans Saints and Kelvin Benjamin for the Carolina Panthers. Both put up about 15 points, both rookies on their respective teams, both looking to be a big part of that offense in their first year. Do we think this is something they can do week in and week out?
I like Kelvin Benjamin, absolutely. I mean, when you got a backup quarterback in there and he puts up 15 points, I mean, he looked great. He's a big target. You could just close your eyes, throw the ball up, and he's going to go up and get it. I like that one, especially Cam Newton comes back. I think that's going to be a happening thing for Carolina. So I like that. Brandon Cooks, I mean, when you have Drew Brees throwing to you, that's a great offense. Look how many points they put up against the Falcons. I mean, the Falcons' D isn't anything to brag about, but still, any Drew Brees offense with a receiver like that, he's quick. I like both of them, man. I can definitely rely on them. I'm gonna if I have Kelvin Benjamin, so I'm definitely gonna start playing him in one of my flex positions for sure every week.
Yeah, and I think you sort of hit it there, and it's a question of when you have Drew Brees throwing to you, right? And we've been hearing about Brandon Cooks since he got to camp. It's just been rave review after rave review after rave review. And the Saints made a point of getting him involved in the game in multiple different ways. And so Drew Brees is going to be getting him opportunities. Like, that's something that's going to be happening. I definitely like him a little more than Kelvin Benjamin. I think being in that Saints system, he's set up to have more success. I think, Benjamin, his growing pains are going to be much more pronounced because he doesn't have the team around him to help him through that.
Right.
So if you're going with one of these two guys, I would say Brandon Cooks, but Benjamin's not a bad option either.
Yeah. Right. No, I think I have both of them on one of my teams. I'm very happy.
Another receiver I want to ask you about, because I think you made a comment to me about that guy, Hearns in Jacksonville.
Oh, okay.
Put up some points, but what do you think?
I'm selling it.
Okay.
You know what? I would buy it if Jacksonville got to start every drive inside the 20.
Right.
Then I'm buying it. Then I'm buying it all day. But they put up 14 points off turnovers, both of the touchdowns at Hearns, I don't know his first name. And and honestly, they didn't do anything the rest of the game, so I don't know why I should get excited about him.
Well, that was the thing. Like, when I saw the points that he put up, I was like, who is this guy? And you're like, don't even worry about that. It's not going to keep happening. And, of course, it's Jacksonville, so, yeah.
Next, we're going to go only one tight end. There's normally not a lot to talk about with tight ends, but there was one guy that stuck out to us, which we called last week. We did. Dwayne Allen, tight end for Indianapolis, on kind of a weird play. He scored a 40-yard touchdown, boosted his stats. He ended up with, I think, 13, 14 points. Do we think Dwayne Allen can do it? You guys know I'm buying it, but
I buy it too. I like him better even than Coby Fleener. Coby Fleener last season, he was up and down. Even in this game, he didn't do a whole lot. He wasn't making catches. Dwayne Allen made plays. And he's a big boy. I think they're going to utilize him more because he's going to be good for blocking. I like him. I'm buying him.
He's quick and he is big. And I think that's something you pointed out right there. Coby Fleener wasn't getting a lot of looks and a lot of passes thrown his way. And I think that's kind of what we were talking about last week, in that Dwayne Allen is their guy at tight end.
Yeah.
He is. Don't get confused. It's not like a 50-50 thing with him and Coby Fleener. It's Dwayne Allen.
It's Dwayne Allen.
That's the guy they want out there making plays, and I think we're going to continue to see that moving forward. Yeah. Defense and special teams. This is always a really, really hard thing to predict in fantasy because it is 11 players that affect it, not just one. And then it's always so matchup based. But in week 1, we saw two teams do, I think, an exceptional job. Yeah. That's Houston against the aforementioned Washington Redskins and Tennessee. Let's play it this way. Who do you like more moving forward the rest of the season? Peter?
Well, I have to say I like Houston. Okay. You're saying it's 11 players and not one, but Houston has that one player in J.J. Watt. Mm-hmm. And J.J. Watt was able to destroy single-handedly the Washington Redskins this week. He sacks, blocks, rushes, everything that he can. There's a reason he's paid like a quarterback. Yeah. Because he can affect a game like a quarterback can. Mm-hmm. And so I think, Clowney's still injured, but I think this defense, 2 years ago was a top 5, top 10 team. Mm-hmm. You look at their schedule, it's actually not that difficult this year. So I think they have a chance. Yep. Yeah, I think they have a chance to sort of really, put up some good numbers.
Mm-hmm. I'm with him, exactly. I think you hit it right on the head. I like Houston D. We liked them before because they came off a season they were 12-4. They had a terrible season last year, but they were also riddled with injuries as well. They got guys that are coming back that are healthy now. Mm-hmm. They've got a great defensive line. They've got some great linebackers in there that they're making plays on offense. So, even if their secondary isn't amazing, if you've got great pass rushers that can make plays on the quarterback, your secondary doesn't have to be as good. But I like it. They did a great job. So that's my D.
I agree. We already talked about J.J. Watt. We talked about Brian Cushing last week. He's coming back. He's arguably the MVP of that defense at the linebacker level. They also have a guy, Brooks Reed, out of Arizona, who is a great edge rusher, who everyone drafted or was looking at because he was a J.J. Watt type. He's a guy that just looks like an animal. Clay Matthews, another one of those guys. DJ Swearinger at the safety position, a guy who's very, very aggressive, gets a lot of stupid penalties, but he's still a damn good football player. And not to mention Jonathan Josephs as their lockdown corner. So I do like that defense a lot moving forward, especially with that schedule. They play Oakland next week. They get to play Jacksonville twice.
Oh, yeah. Houston D.
And the one word of warning on Brian Cushing, I would say, is if the NFL goes through with their new drug testing protocol and you get some HGH testing in there, Cushing's a guy who I think back since his high school days has had rumors of performance enhancement going on. So we'll see.
Hey, we'll see what happens. So we're gonna go take some HGH, but when we get back, we're gonna talk some of our matchups for next week, what our predictions are. Our game of the week is Atlanta and Cincinnati. We'll be getting into that when we get back on the front office.
Welcome back to the front office. Now it's time for us to take our deep dive. This week's matchup is Atlanta at Cincinnati, two teams which are coming in 1-0, both with quarterback narratives, let's call it.
Okay.
Jordan, what are your thoughts sort of going into this game?
Well, I'm very intrigued coming off Matt Ryan's performance last week, what he's going to be able to do against the Cincinnati D that's probably going to generate more pressure than the New Orleans D did. Or at least more natural pressure without having to do blitz packages and the Rob Ryan love fest that is the blitzing, putting pressure on the quarterback. So what is that going to come? How's that going to come into play? Geno Atkins on the front line of this defense was out last year with a torn ACL. I'm very curious to see what he does throughout the season. Very excited to see what the Cincinnati D can do. One thing to keep an eye on is that they lost Michael Johnson, who was their best D end last year, but they still have incredible talent at the linebacker and in the secondary. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. If they're going to bring a lot of pressure, are they going to drop back into a coverage that's going to cause problems for Atlanta? Is Atlanta going to be able to run the ball against these people and keep some balance to them? And is are their wideouts going to be able to get open and make plays? I don't really know how this one's going to shake out, but I will in about 5 minutes. Mark?
Well, I mean, kind of what I think is when you look at Atlanta's run game, their run game isn't amazing. And when you're going up against the Cincinnati D-line, I think they're not going to be that productive. So they are, it's going to rely a lot on Matt Ryan throwing to all of his receivers. So if that secondary does the drop back and they can play their coverage and they can stop Matt Ryan in that area and keep him from doing what he did in New Orleans, I think Cincinnati can do it. I think that's what they've got to do, really, is just stop that passing offense. That's what they really need to look at. And then the other thing I think, too, is what Cincinnati needs to do. Their offense is a little bit questionable. People don't buy into Andy Dalton. He's still got to prove himself. So he's still got one of the best receivers in the league. So and he's going up against an Atlanta defense, which isn't anything too amazing. So
and you brought up the flip version of what I brought up. I talked Cincinnati D Atlanta. Oh, but let's flip it around.
Yep.
And the Atlanta defense isn't anything to write home about. We've talked about before. But what they do is they live and die off turnovers. If they can put that ball into the offense's hands, this allows them to win games. If they can't create turnovers, then they're not going to win games. It's just that simple. They're not going to be a bend not break defense. You will score on them. But then you look on the other side of the ball, Andy Dalton, what's his problem been is taking care of the football.
Right,
End of last year, what's he doing? He's throwing up picks, cost them a playoff game. Is he going to be able to take care of the football? And he should be able to if they stick to their game plan, which should be handing the ball off to Gio Bernard, strong run game, and hitting A.J. Green on open routes, on play action pass. Will they be able to do that, and will he take care of the ball? I think that's going to be the big keystone right to this whole team.
Yeah. And I think you hit it on the head. Can the Bengals establish that run game? Because against the Ravens this week, they really weren't able to do that. Mm-hmm. And you look at Giovanni Bernard's stat line. I mean, he was catching a lot of short passes out of the backfield.
Right.
They were going, the old Andy Reid playbook. Replace those runs with the short pass. And if they start having to do that against Atlanta, it makes it a little more difficult. It makes it a little more one-dimensional. And if they sort of fall in that, I think Atlanta has more of a chance. I mean, Atlanta definitely has sort of a wider array of weapons to work with.
Right.
So if they can isolate A.J. Green and sort of stuff Gio Bernard, the Bengals might have a little more trouble moving the ball than they'd like to. Yeah. Even though they've definitely got the edge on defense. So it'll be interesting to see.
And you bring up last week for the Bengals, which is really interesting because this is a team that couldn't score a touchdown for the first 3 or 4 or almost the entire game. They were in the red zone, settled for 6 field goals before they were ever able to do anything. And you can't trade field goals for touchdowns with the Atlanta Falcons. You're gonna get burned really quickly.
You're gonna be chasing them the whole game.
Watch them when they get in the red zone, when they get into Atlanta territory. How effective are they to move the ball? If you see in those first couple quarters they're having trouble, this could go Atlanta's way very quickly.
For sure.
Predictions, Mark.
I'm going to stick to my defense wins championships and go with Cincinnati on this one. I'm going to pick them 20-14. I say their defense gets it done, and they establish the run game this time. So I still am not going to buy on Andy Dalton. I think he and A.J. Green are going to make they're going to make some plays, obviously, but I'm just buying Cincinnati more.
Look, I respect A.J. Green and that Cincinnati offense, but I think they are going to encounter some of the same troubles that they had last week. I think their offense has some good parts, but I don't think overall it's going to be able to hold up. I think they are going to start trading some field goals instead of touchdowns, and I think they're going to lose this one. I'm thinking 28-24.
There you go. Leaves it open for you.
Admittedly, I'm still kind of on the fence, and here's why. I think Cincinnati's a more talented team. They're playing at home. I think they have the talent to pull it off, but something we forgot to mention, actually, is this is a Cincinnati team that not only lost its offensive coordinator, they lost their defensive coordinator to head coaching positions over the offseason. That takes a learning curve to come and figure out who you are and what pieces you have to work with, not only from a player standpoint, but from that coach's standpoint. That guy's going to step in. And first off, they have to be a good defensive coordinator, be a good offensive coordinator to accomplish that goal. You look at Brian Schottenheimer in St. Louis, he still hasn't fucking figured it out. So I'm actually going to take the Atlanta Falcons taking this one in Cincinnati. Normally I would have said Cincinnati because they're at home, but I'm going to take Atlanta Falcons, probably something like 27-23.
All right. Well, that does it for that. Next up, we have our 2-minute drill.
Offense.
We will be right back.
Hello, welcome back to the front office. We're about to jump into our 2-minute offense. We're going to try and put this baby home before the end of the show. Right off the bat, we have Pittsburgh at Baltimore. I'm going to take Pittsburgh in this. I love the way they played last week. I love what Ben Roethlisberger's doing. He's managing the game well, and Le'Veon Bell's running like a champ. Pittsburgh takes this one.
Next up is St. Louis at Tampa Bay. Two teams that didn't come out looking great in Week 1. I think that Tampa Bay is able to take it, and yeah.
Next, we got New Orleans at Cleveland, and after what we saw last week, I mean, New Orleans, Drew Brees' offense, Cleveland did not play well at all. It's New Orleans, man, all the way.
All right. Miami at Buffalo. You know, two teams that surprised us in Week 1. Buffalo playing at home. Miami, I'm going to take Buffalo. I don't think Miami's got everything on offense. Buffalo at home.
Next up, Jacksonville at Washington. Another two teams that didn't do particularly well last week. Bit of a theme. I think Jacksonville's able to come in and get the win in this one. I think that the Washington professional football team is in trouble this year. They're in line for a very high pick. I think Jacksonville showed some signs of life last week that are going to come out in Week 2.
Next, we have Dallas at Tennessee. Dallas, there seems to be confusion there. They're playing in Tennessee. Tennessee just came off a big win. We're buying into Jake Locker, so I'm going to take Tennessee at home.
All right. Arizona at the New York Giants. I'm going to take Arizona. I normally wouldn't. The Giants just looked terrible last week. I don't see anything changing in 1 week for them. Arizona.
Next up, New England at Minnesota, a game near and dear to my heart, and a little terrifying after watching the Patriots be manhandled by the Dolphins last week. I think, if the Patriots do one thing, it's they don't lose consecutive games. I think they're able to come out. I think that offensive line gets it together in the week, and they come out and beat Minnesota.
Next, we have Philadelphia at Indianapolis. This one's going to be a tough one, I think. These guys are going to duke it out. I'm still going to pick Philadelphia. I believe in Nick Foles and LaShawn McCoy more than I believe in the Colts. Andrew Luck, he's probably still going to put up a serious fight. It's going to be a close game, but I'm still picking Philadelphia.
All right. Detroit at Carolina. This is going to be a great game. Great offense in Detroit we've talked about against a great defense in Carolina. I think this comes down to whether or not Cam Newton plays. I think if he plays, Carolina can pull this out. If he doesn't, I think this is going to be Detroit. And I'm going to take Carolina. I don't think he sits out another game.
Seattle at San Diego. Sort of a similar game to what San Diego had this week, facing Arizona, except the defense is even better. San Diego does do what Seattle gives up on defense, that short passing game. I think they'll make it closer. They'll do better than Green Bay, but the defending champs are going to take this one by at least a touchdown.
Next, we got Houston at Oakland. I'm taking Houston on this one because I'm going to believe that their defense is going to shut down Oakland's offense. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm not too hot on him, but he's got great players on his side that can make some stuff happen. I'm taking Houston.
I agree with that. New York Jets at the Green Bay Packers. I don't think there's much to be said here. I think Green Bay's going to take this at home. I think Eddie Lacy's finally going to get started against a very good run defense, and I don't think that they can cover the wide receivers that Green Bay has. Green Bay takes this at home.
Next up, Kansas City at Denver. playing Denver last year was sort of what started the derailment of Kansas City's season, sort of exposed them for what they were after that fantastic start. I think this year they get exposed a little earlier, going into Mile High, facing Peyton Manning. I don't really think they have much of a chance. I've got Denver by at least 10.
Next, we got Chicago at San Francisco. San Francisco playing at home. With the lackluster offense Chicago put up last week and going into San Francisco's home, they make turnovers in the passing game. I think San Francisco takes it.
There you go. There you have it. Every single prediction here on the front office. We are out of Los Angeles, California. Once again, my name is Jordan. It's my friend Peter.
Mark.
There's Mark. You saw it already. And by the way, this is what awesome looks like. So send us your questions. Feel free to send us comments. We're going to be throwing stuff up on Twitter. We want you to caption our vines. Talk to us about the Fappening. Hit us up with anything. Our Twitter handle is @thefocast. Our email address is thefrontofficecast@gmail.com. Quick shout out to Leo Volsi for helping us shoot this bad boy. So we'll see you next time here on the front office.
Yeah. That's cool.
All right, that's a wrap. Great job. Great job.
If you guys want to